The cold blue glow of my phone screen, illuminated at 9:03 a.m., cast stark shadows across my face. It was the same text I received annually, a bitter liturgy. So sorry, darling, not enough space for you at the Emerald Lake Retreat this year. My name is Aurora Hayes, I'm 35, and that message arrived last month. Hours later, a casual scroll through social media confirmed my parents' audacious maneuver. They had invited 118 people, all 6 of my siblings with their burgeoning families, in-laws, distant cousins, and even friends of friends. For years, I had been the family's invisible child, the overlooked anomaly. Despite building a remarkably successful career in architectural visualization, the pattern of exclusion was chillingly consistent, undeniably deliberate. This year, I vowed, would be different. This year, the silence would break. Before I continue, if you've ever felt like an outsider in your own family, a ghost at your own feast, then hit that like and subscribe button. Trust me, the unfolding narrative will show you exactly why blood isn't always thicker than water, and why some legacies are forged, not inherited. The Emerald Lake Family Retreat wasn't just any vacation. It was a cherished, almost sacred, tradition begun by my grandparents, Eleanor and Arthur Hayes, nearly 50 years ago. I remember Grandpa Arthur, his eyes twinkling with warmth, telling stories of how he and Grandma Eleanor first fell in love with the crystal-clear waters and towering ancient pines during their honeymoon, a verdant paradise. One day, he'd say, a gentle hand on my head, "This will be our family's special place, our enduring legacy." True to his word, they purchased the sprawling lakeside property when I was just 8 years old. That land became the vibrant backdrop for countless, sun-drenched childhood memories. I recalled racing down to the private boathouse with my siblings every summer morning, our uninhibited laughter echoing across the placid water. My oldest brother, Liam, now 42, would organize elaborate scavenger hunts throughout the 15-acre property, intricate puzzles that spanned forests and shoreline. My sisters, Isabella, 39, and Clara, 37, would help Grandma prepare enormous, aromatic family meals in the rustic, open-air kitchen, their faces flour-dusted and joyful. The twins, Finn and Owen, 36, were perpetually getting into mischief, climbing the tallest, most forbidden pines, their defiant shouts ringing through the air. And my youngest sister, Ilara, the baby at 30, was Grandpa Arthur's shadow, following him around as he meticulously tended to the sprawling wildflower gardens. But it was me that Grandpa Arthur would take on special vision walks around the property. He noticed my innate love for sketching and conceptualizing spaces before anyone else did, seeing past my quiet demeanor. "You perceive the world differently, Aurora," he'd say, his voice a gentle encouragement, as I meticulously sketched the mountains reflected in the lake, translating nature into geometric forms. "You possess a profound gift, a unique way of seeing what others cannot." He'd often set up a small drafting table for me on the wraparound porch, and sometimes he'd sit silently beside me for hours as I rendered designs, offering subtle, insightful encouragement. "Your art, your vision, will take you to places far beyond this lake, child," Grandpa would often muse. "Don't ever let anyone tell you it's not a worthy path. It's the most worthy path if it's true to you." When I announced my decision to attend a prestigious architectural design school instead of the pragmatic business program my parents had meticulously selected, Grandpa and Grandma were my only vocal supporters. My father, Richard Hayes, CEO of a national real estate development firm, made no effort to conceal his profound disappointment. "Architects don't pay mortgages on lakeside estates, Aurora," he declared coldly at dinner, his voice devoid of warmth. My mother, Patricia, always his social echo, nodded in stoic agreement, her lips a thin line of disapproval. The summer after my sophomore year of college, a cruel twist of fate struck. Both grandparents passed away within months of each other, their shared legacy ending too soon. Their absence left a gaping, aching hole in our family, a void that time seemed unable to fill. However, they'd meticulously ensured their beloved Emerald Lake property would continue bringing us together. They left it jointly to my parents, accompanied by a heartfelt, handwritten letter expressing their fervent wish that the annual family gatherings continue, that the spirit of connection endure. And continue they did, though the atmosphere changed, subtly at first, then dramatically. My parents took over organizing the retreats, transforming what had once been casual, joy-filled gatherings into increasingly formal, almost corporate, showcase events. Guest lists expanded relentlessly beyond immediate family to include my father's business associates, potential investors, and my mother's entire vast social circle. What was once a cherished place of authentic connection and unfiltered laughter became a calculated networking opportunity, a glossy stage for their burgeoning social ambition. Despite my parents' thinly veiled disapproval of my chosen career path, I worked tirelessly through architectural design school, fueled by a quiet defiance. I took on demanding freelance visualization projects, honing my skills while my classmates partied away their student loans. By graduation, I already boasted an impressive portfolio and a burgeoning client list. Today, I run my own highly successful design studio, Ether Visuals, with a diverse clientele ranging from cutting-edge tech startups to established luxury real estate brands. But my professional achievements, my industry awards, my glowing client testimonials never seemed to register with my parents. They remained stubbornly, willfully blind to my success. The first year I was pointedly excluded from the retreat was 3 years ago, a brutal shock. The text message, terse and unapologetic, arrived 2 weeks before the event. "Darling, we're keeping it small this year. Just immediate family. Not enough space at the lake. Maybe next summer." I was deeply hurt, a raw, aching wound, but I desperately made excuses for them in my mind. Maybe they really are scaling back. Maybe they need intimate family bonding with just my siblings. I told myself it didn't matter, that their approval was irrelevant. Yet, I cried myself to sleep that night, the pillow damp with tears of betrayal. The crushing truth emerged through social media, a digital dagger to my heart. Photos flooded my feed, not just of my siblings, but of extended family, old family friends, and my father's influential business associates, nearly 60 people in total, celebrating lavishly. When I casually mentioned seeing the photos to my sister Isabella, she became instantly defensive, her voice brittle. "Mom and Dad just thought you'd be busy with work, Aurora. You're always so focused, so busy." Each of my siblings, I knew, navigated their own complex relationship with our parents' towering expectations. Liam, the oldest at 42, had dutifully followed Dad into real estate development and lived just 3 blocks from our parents with his wife and 3 children. He was the golden child, the infallible heir who could do no wrong. Isabella, 39, married a prominent plastic surgeon and had cultivated the image of the perfect corporate wife, a flawless reflection of our mother. The twins, Finn and Owen, 36, both became corporate lawyers at Dad's urging and worked for the same prestigious law firm. Clara, 37, was a pediatrician married to another doctor, a respectable profession, in my parents' eyes, a worthy, conventional choice. And Alara, the baby at 30, was a high school teacher who married her college sweetheart, a financial advisor. Then there was me, single at 35, no children, running a creative business instead of having a real job, as my father perpetually called it. I was the black sheep, the perpetual disappointment, the artistic rebel who defied their carefully constructed mold. For 2 consecutive years, the pattern repeated with agonizing precision. Each time, the terse "not enough space" text arrived, punctually, like a cruel reminder. And each time, social media relentlessly exposed the blatant, public lie. I maintained a fragile facade of indifference, burying myself in my growing business, desperately trying to convince myself that their blatant exclusion didn't cut me to the bone. But this year, the insidious pattern finally broke me. This year was profoundly different. I wasn't prepared for the cold, brutal truth I discovered while idly scrolling through Instagram one evening in early June. My brother Finn had posted a photo, innocent on its surface, of a printed guest itinerary for the upcoming Emerald Lake retreat. The caption read, "Getting excited for the biggest family gathering yet. #LakeLife, #FamilyForever." My hand trembled uncontrollably as I zoomed in on the paper, my breath catching in my throat. And there it was, stark and undeniable, a detailed schedule for activities divided into groups, and at the very top, in bold, confident letters, 118 confirmed guests. 118 people. And somehow, still not enough space for one more. For me. My hand trembled as I stared at Finn's post, the digital image a searing brand on my soul. I counted the names I could make out on the blurry image, all 6 of my siblings, their spouses, their children. I spotted cousins I hadn't seen in years, my mother's sister and her entire sprawling family, even my father's former college roommate and his wife, people with only the most tenuous connections to the original tradition. Everyone but me. My heart a cold, hollow drum against my ribs. I immediately texted Finn, my fingers flying across the keyboard, forcing a casual tone. "Retreat looks amazing. Huge group this year. Going to be epic." His response came quickly, almost too quickly, betraying his excitement. "Yeah, going to be epic. Mom and Dad went all out. Best one yet." Wow. 118 people, I typed, a deliberate, casual probe. Must be using every inch of the property. "How do you know the exact number, Finn?" His next reply was a dagger to my heart. "Dad's been stressing about accommodating everyone. Had to rent 2 neighboring properties to handle the overflow. Insane." My stomach plummeted, a nauseating drop. They'd rented additional properties. The not enough space excuse crumbled completely, revealing the malicious intent beneath. I set my phone down on my desk, the illuminated screen a mocking beacon, and walked to my apartment window, staring out at the Seattle skyline as hot, furious tears streamed down my face, blurring the city lights into streaks of pain. It wasn't about space. It never had been. It was about control. It was about exclusion. It was about punishment. The physical reaction was immediate and overwhelming. My chest tightened, a crushing weight. My breathing became shallow, ragged. I slid down against the cool glass of the window until I was sitting on the floor, hugging my knees, trying to make myself small, invisible. For nearly an hour, I couldn't move, a prisoner of my own mind, replaying years of subtle exclusions and blatant dismissals. The time my architectural rendering won a national competition, and my parents skipped the prestigious ceremony for one of the twins' mundane baseball games. The Christmas when everyone received thoughtful, personalized gifts, while I was handed a generic, impersonal gift card, a cruel joke. The carefully staged family photos where I was always positioned at the very edge, easily cropped out, a convenient afterthought. When I could finally move again, my limbs heavy with emotional exhaustion, I called my best friend Serena. We'd met in architecture school, forging a bond stronger than any blood tie, and had been each other's unwavering support system ever since. She answered on the second ring, her voice warm and familiar. "They did it again," I choked out, my voice breaking, dissolving into raw, guttural sobs. "The retreat. 118 people, Serena. They rented extra properties to fit everyone. That's beyond hurtful. That's deliberately cruel. Am I overreacting? Maybe there's a reason. Maybe I'm just too sensitive." "Stop," Serena interrupted firmly, her voice sharp with unwavering conviction. "This isn't about space or aura, and you know it. This is about control and punishment. They're punishing you for living a life they didn't choose, for daring to be your authentic self. They're punishing you for making your own space in the world." Deep down, I knew she was right. My parents had never truly forgiven me for choosing art and design over pragmatic business, for building a life that didn't align with their rigid, conventional vision. But acknowledging the bitter truth didn't lessen the searing pain. It sharpened it into a focused ache. That night, memories of previous family gatherings, a gallery of my humiliation, flooded back with agonizing clarity. The Thanksgiving when my father proudly introduced all my siblings by their impressive professional accomplishments, their lofty titles, but described me simply as still doing her art thing, a dismissive wave of his hand. The Mother's Day brunch where my mother gushed about her fervent desire for more grandchildren, then looked directly at me with a pointed stare and said, "Of course, Aurora, you need to find a husband first, don't you?" Always the subtle digs, the insidious, little reminders that I wasn't quite meeting their unspoken, impossible expectations. Sleep utterly eluded me. I tossed and turned, replaying conversations, imagining confrontations that would never happen, my mind a relentless, tormenting loop. Around 3 a.m., desperate for any kind of clarity, I called Isabella, my sister, knowing she'd be up feeding her newborn. "Do you know I wasn't invited to Emerald Lake?" I asked, my voice flat, without preamble. A heavy pause. "Mom mentioned you were busy with work," she said defensively, her voice tight. "Did you question that, Isabella? Did anyone bother to ask me if I was busy?" "Aurora, you know how it is," she backpedaled, her voice laced with familiar exasperation. "Mom and Dad handled the invitations. They invited over 100 people." "Isabella," I pressed, my voice barely above a whisper. "They rented extra properties. They chose to exclude me." Another longer, uncomfortable pause. "Look, you know they don't really understand your lifestyle," she finally offered, a weak excuse. "Maybe if you made more effort to connect with them." "My lifestyle?" I retorted, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "You mean my successful design studio? My award-winning architectural visualizations? The fact that I support myself doing something I love, something that brings actual beauty into the world." "That's not what I meant," she backpedaled quickly, sensing my fury. "It's just, you're different. You always have been different. Different doesn't mean I deserve to be excluded from my own family, Isabella." "Maybe call Mom tomorrow," Isabella suggested weakly, eager to escape the conversation. "I'm sure it's just a misunderstanding." I hung up without responding. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a pattern. And I had been allowing it to continue for far too long. Morning came after a sleepless night, and with it, a cold, sharp clarity. The sun streamed through my apartment window as I made coffee, illuminating the numerous design awards and framed client testimonials adorning my wall. I'd built something profoundly meaningful, something substantial, entirely on my own terms. I'd honored my grandparents' unwavering belief in me, their vision for my artistic path. And I had been foolishly, desperately, seeking approval from people who would never, ever truly give it, whose validation was a constantly moving target. An idea began to form, not of angry confrontation or pathetic pleading for inclusion, but of something entirely different, something bold and transformative. If my family couldn't find space for me, perhaps it was time to create my own space, on my own magnificent terms. My first instinct, a primal scream of rage, was to call my parents and finally unleash years of suppressed hurt, to post the raw, unvarnished truth on social media for our entire extended family to witness, to show up uninvited at Emerald Lake and force a dramatic, public confrontation. But as I sipped my morning coffee, bitter but invigorating, staring at the faded photo of my grandparents on my desk, their kind eyes looking up at me, I knew those impulsive reactions wouldn't honor who I was, or the quiet strength they had so patiently instilled in me. "When people show you who they are, believe them the first time," my wise grandmother used to say, quoting Maya Angelou, her voice calm and firm. My parents had shown me, repeatedly and unequivocally, precisely where I stood in their hierarchy. No amount of desperate confrontation, no amount of tearful pleading, would fundamentally change that brutal truth. Instead of letting anger consume me, turning me into a bitter, resentful shadow, I called Diane Lockhart, my former professor turned mentor in the architectural visualization industry. A woman whose sharp intellect and unwavering integrity I deeply respected. Over video chat, I poured out the whole agonizing story, my voice occasionally breaking with the raw emotion. "I just don't know what to do with these feelings, Diane," I concluded, a desperate plea in my voice. "I can't keep pretending it doesn't hurt. It's crushing me." Diane, her iconic red glasses perched on her nose, leaned closer to the camera, her gaze unwavering, filled with profound empathy. "Aurora, you're a creator. Your very essence is to build, to design, to bring something new into existence. When faced with destruction, creators build. When faced with exclusion, they include. When faced with pettiness, they respond with magnitude. With an undeniable, grand gesture." "What exactly are you suggesting, Diane?" I asked, a flicker of bewildered hope. "If I were you," she said with a small, knowing smile, her eyes twinkling with a shared vision, "I'd channel this energy, this raw, powerful emotion, into creating something truly magnificent. Something that would make your grandparents incredibly proud. Something that would unequivocally remind you of your own immense worth, your unique vision. Build your own legacy, darling." After our call, a profound shift occurred within me. The crushing weight began to lift, replaced by a surge of audacious inspiration. I found myself obsessively researching luxury properties around Lake Tahoe. If my family, with their narrow vision, could rent additional properties to fit their bloated guest list, why couldn't I? I wasn't trying to compete, not exactly. The idea of creating my own bespoke retreat, my own unique tradition, suddenly felt incredibly empowering, a defiant act of self-love. That's when I stumbled upon it, a digital beacon in my search, the Summit Estate, a breathtaking property just 15 minutes from my family's sprawling place. It boasted 6 meticulously designed bedrooms, panoramic lake views that stretched to infinity, private beach access, and, most notably, was currently available for the exact week of my family's traditional retreat. The rental price made me wince, a sharp intake of breath, but I had been diligently saving for a substantial down payment on a dream condo, an investment in my future. This, I realized, felt infinitely more important, a direct investment in my present self-worth. The next day, fueled by a renewed sense of purpose, I had lunch with my client, Lena Petrova, who owned a highly successful, luxury event planning business called Viridian Events. I had designed her entire brand identity and website the previous year, and we'd forged a strong, genuine friendship in the process. "You're really going to do this, Aurora?" she asked, her eyes wide with a mix of awe and excitement, after I outlined my audacious idea to her. "Create an entire alternative retreat, just for yourself?" "Not just any retreat," I explained, my excitement building with every word, my voice filled with a passion I hadn't felt in years. "A creative minds retreat. I could invite friends, clients, fellow designers, artists, people who genuinely appreciate creative work, who speak my language, who see the world the way I do. We could have workshops, outdoor activities, amazing food, everything my grandparents' retreats used to embody before they became my parents' sterile networking events." Lena's eyes lit up, a kindred spirit. "I love it, Aurora. Absolutely love it. And I want to help. This is literally what I do for a living, crafting unforgettable experiences." We spent the entire afternoon brainstorming, mapping out every intricate detail. Lena suggested local gourmet chefs she'd worked with, renowned for their farm-to-table cuisine, who could create exquisite, multi-course meals. I immediately thought of talented artists and designers who could lead inspiring workshops. We meticulously mapped out potential activities: sunrise yoga on the expansive deck, leisurely boat tours of the pristine lake, exhilarating hiking expeditions through the towering pines, and magical evening bonfires filled with music, laughter, and authentic stories. "You'll need a stunning website and a compelling social media presence, Aurora," Lena insisted, ever the professional. Make it look utterly professional, exclusive, even aspirational. It needs to tell your story. I can handle that part, I smiled, already envisioning the elegant, minimalist design, the vibrant imagery. Over the next week, operating on a frantic surge of adrenaline and creative energy, I secured 2 weeks of precious vacation time from my studio, transferred a significant portion of my savings, a terrifying but exhilarating leap of faith, to cover the initial deposit on the property, and meticulously designed a stunning digital invitation. The invite list required careful, thoughtful consideration. Serena was first, of course, my unwavering anchor. Then, other close friends from architecture school and the design world, clients who had, over the years, transcended the professional boundary to become genuine friends, my old college roommate and her husband. After some profound deliberation, I also made the bold decision to extend invitations to Clara and Liam, my 2 siblings who had, on rare occasions, shown flashes of genuine support for my career, who might, just might, appreciate this olive branch, this unexpected act of inclusion. With each name I added, my excitement burgeoned, a quiet, growing triumph. These were people who valued me for exactly who I was, for my unique vision, not who they desperately wanted me to be. People who genuinely celebrated my successes rather than subtly diminishing them. People who truly made space for me in their lives, who saw my worth. I poured my heart into building a bespoke website for the retreat, complete with breathtaking imagery of the property, detailed descriptions of the planned activities, and professional biographies of the workshop leaders I'd meticulously secured. I created exclusive, private social media accounts that confirmed attendees could follow for real-time updates and exclusive content. Everything was designed with the meticulous attention to detail and impeccable aesthetic sensibility that had built my reputation in the industry. Of course, insidious doubts crept in during quiet moments, whispered insidious questions. What if no one came? What if the people I invited saw it as a desperate, sad attempt to create a substitute family, a consolation prize? What if the whole thing was a financial disaster that left me broke and utterly embarrassed? But each time these crippling thoughts surfaced, I forcefully reminded myself of what was truly at stake. My self-respect, my agency, my unwavering refusal to continue accepting exclusion as my unchosen due. I couldn't control my family's cruel actions, but I could, definitively, control my profound response to them. And I chose to respond by creating something beautiful, something vibrant, something uniquely mine. 2 weeks after Finn's revealing Instagram post, a silent explosion in my digital world, I had confirmed 22 enthusiastic guests for my Creative Minds retreat, meticulously scheduled for the exact same week as my family's grand, exclusive gathering. Clara had accepted with an unbridled enthusiasm, writing, "This sounds absolutely amazing, Aurora. So much more my speed than the usual formal family thing. Can't wait." Liam had politely declined with a kind, thoughtful note explaining that he genuinely couldn't miss the family event with his kids involved, but he genuinely appreciated the unexpected invitation and wished me the best. As I meticulously finalized the last details, I felt something I hadn't experienced in relation to my family for years. Not the familiar ache of anger or the sting of hurt, but a profound, calm sense of purpose, a quiet, inner strength. For the first time in my life, I wasn't merely reacting to their relentless exclusion. I was actively, powerfully, creating my own inclusion. Securing the Summit estate turned out to be just the first step in a process far more complex and intricate than I'd initially anticipated. The property was nothing short of magnificent, a modern architectural masterpiece with floor-to-ceiling windows that framed Tahoe's breathtaking azure waters, a gourmet kitchen that would make any Michelin-starred chef envious, expansive outdoor living spaces designed for grand entertaining, and even a private dock with 2 sleek boats available for guest use. But transforming the stunning, empty space into the vibrant, interactive retreat I envisioned required meticulous attention to countless, painstaking details. Lena, my brilliant co-conspirator, became my invaluable right hand, leveraging her extensive event planning connections to secure top-tier services at incredibly favorable friend rates. Together, we contracted a renowned local catering company specializing in exquisite farm-to-table cuisine, arranged for discreet daily housekeeping, and even hired a talented professional photographer to document the entire experience, capturing every authentic moment. "People should see what you're creating, Aurora," Lena insisted, her voice firm. "Not just your family, but everyone who's ever been made to feel not enough, to feel invisible. This is bigger than you." Each day, after diligently finishing my demanding client work, I'd spend my evenings consumed by planning workshop materials and coordinating with the exceptional artists and designers I'd invited to lead the sessions. Miranda, a celebrated ceramicist, would guide a hands-on pottery workshop on the property's sun-drenched back patio. Troy, a renowned nature photographer, would lead early morning photo expeditions through the misty pines. Grace, ever the insightful, would conduct a transformative session on creative journaling and self-discovery. I wanted the retreat to embody everything my grandparents had cherished and valued: creativity, authentic connection, unbridled joy, and unwavering authenticity. I remembered how Grandpa Arthur would meticulously organize stargazing nights on the dock, telling captivating stories about constellations as we huddled under thick blankets, feeling tiny yet infinite. How Grandma Eleanor would arrange wild, vibrant flowers from the property in simple mason jars, placing them throughout the house, infusing every room with natural beauty. These weren't expensive gestures, but they were thoughtful ones, imbued with a profound sense of care that made everyone feel uniquely special. The financial strain, however, began to mount as deposits came due, a stark reality check. I took on additional client projects, working late into the night, fueled by strong coffee and sheer willpower, to ensure I could fund the retreat without completely depleting my savings, a terrifying prospect. There were moments, in the quiet, desperate hours, when I questioned my entire decision. Was I taking this too far? Was I merely overreacting to years of deeply ingrained exclusion by pouring thousands of dollars into what might seem like a petty, ostentatious response? What if this was all a terrible mistake? But then, like a lifeline, I'd receive an excited message from one of my invited guests, expressing how much they were genuinely looking forward to the retreat, detailing their hopes for creative breakthroughs, and my fragile resolve would instantly strengthen. This wasn't about spite. This was about creating profound joy where there had been only persistent hurt. 1 week before the retreat was set to begin, disaster struck, a cruel, ironic twist of fate. The catering company called, their voice dripping with false apologies, to inform me that they had carelessly double-booked and could no longer service our event. I sat on my apartment floor, surrounded by the meticulously arranged welcome basket supplies I'd been assembling: artisanal soaps, local wines, custom journals, fighting back hot, stinging tears of sheer frustration and despair. "I can't believe this is happening, Grace," I choked out over the phone, my voice raw with panic. "What am I going to do? 22 people expecting gourmet meals for 5 days, and suddenly no chef." "Breathe, Aurora," Grace said calmly, her voice a soothing anchor. "This is fixable. Everything is fixable. Let me make some calls. I know people." Within hours, with Grace's incredible networking skills, she had connected me with Chef Julianne Rossi, a personal chef who had trained at the prestigious Culinary Institute of America and had recently moved to the area. She was, miraculously, between jobs and available for the entire week. After meticulously reviewing the ambitious menus I'd planned, Julianne, with a confident smile, suggested subtle refinements that would actually improve the dining experience, elevating it to another level. What had seemed like an insurmountable disaster had, through unexpected help, transmuted into a serendipitous upgrade. The day before guests were set to arrive, I drove up to Emerald Lake with my car packed to the brim with supplies, a nervous anticipation fluttering in my stomach. As I pulled into the circular driveway of the Summit Estate, the afternoon sun illuminated the property in a golden, ethereal light, painting the scene with a sense of destiny. For a moment, I sat in my car, overwhelmed, tears blurring my vision by what I'd accomplished against all odds and the exciting, daunting adventure that lay ahead. The property manager, a professional, efficient man, gave me a brief tour, explaining the intricate features of the sprawling house and ceremoniously handing over the heavy set of keys. When he left, I stood alone in the vast, echoing great room, gazing out at the breathtaking expanse of the lake through the enormous, floor-to-ceiling windows. This magnificent space was mine, at least for the next week, and I finally had the power to fill it with whatever energy I chose, not their expectations, but my own vision. I spent the afternoon meticulously preparing individual welcome baskets for each guest, turning them into bespoke gifts. Into large, hand-woven market baskets, I carefully placed locally made lavender soaps, small bottles of exquisite Washington State wine, artisan chocolates, custom-designed journals emblazoned with the retreat logo I'd personally created, and heartfelt, handwritten notes thanking each person for choosing to be part of my life, my vision. For Clara's basket, I added a cherished, faded photo I'd found of the two of us as children, painting together on Grandpa Arthur's porch, a small, subtle olive branch. As I arranged the baskets in each exquisitely decorated bedroom, my phone buzzed with an incoming text from my mother. "Hope you're enjoying your summer, darling. Anything special planned for next week?" The text, so innocent on its surface, confirmed what I already knew with a bitter clarity. They hadn't even noticed that I was fully aware of being excluded, of their deliberate lie. They expected me to remain ignorant, to continue accepting their deceptive narratives without question. Instead of responding verbally, I took a stunning photo of the sunset view from the expansive deck, the sky a riot of fiery oranges and purples, and posted it to my Instagram with a single, defiant caption, "Let the creative mind's retreat begin." Hashtag emerging from the shadows, hashtag my own table. I knew my siblings followed my account. I knew word would spread like wildfire through the family network. And for once, in my entire life, I truly didn't care about their reaction. I was done hiding my hurt. I was done pretending their dismissive actions didn't affect me. I was stepping into the light, reclaiming my narrative. The first guests arrived just before noon the next day, their excitement palpable. Serena pulled up in her vintage Volvo, followed closely by Troy, a renowned nature photographer, and his partner, David. Their reactions as they stepped onto the property validated every dollar spent and every hour invested, a visceral reward. "Aurora, this is absolutely unbelievable," Serena gasped, taking in the soaring ceilings, the panoramic lake views, her eyes wide with awe. "You've completely outdone yourself." Throughout the afternoon, the remaining guests trickled in, a diverse group of artists, designers, and creative professionals. Some I hadn't seen in years, and our reunions were filled with genuine warmth, spontaneous laughter, and authentic connection, a stark contrast to the hollow family gatherings. Everyone marveled at the breathtaking property, the thoughtful welcome baskets, the meticulously detailed itinerary I'd created for the week ahead. The energy in the house built with each arrival, creating exactly the atmosphere I'd hoped for, creative, expectant, joyful, a true collaborative spirit. Julianne, the chef, arrived with her assistants and immediately began preparing our exquisite welcome dinner, filling the air with enticing aromas. As I showed guests to their rooms and helped them settle in, a sense of profound satisfaction enveloped me. By sunset, all 22 participants had arrived, including my sister Clara, who pulled me into a tight, genuine hug. "This is incredible, Aurora," she whispered, her voice filled with admiration. "I had no idea you were planning something so utterly amazing. This is so you." "Did anyone else in the family notice my Instagram post, Clara?" I asked quietly, a subtle probe. Clara's expression turned slightly uncomfortable, a flicker of guilt. Mom asked if I knew anything about it. I just said I'd be seeing you this week. I kept it vague. I nodded, appreciating her discretion, her small act of loyalty. Thank you for coming, Clara. It means more than you know. Our first dinner exceeded all expectations. Julienne served a multi-course gourmet meal featuring locally sourced ingredients, each plate a work of culinary art, a symphony of flavors. We dined at a long, communal table on the expansive deck, string lights twinkling overhead like captured stars, the conversation flowing as freely as the exquisite local wine, a rich tapestry of ideas and laughter. I stood to officially welcome everyone, my heart full, my voice clear and confident, as I looked at the faces of people who had chosen to be there, who had genuinely made space for me in their lives, who celebrated my vision. To creativity, to connection, and to creating our own traditions. I toasted, raising my glass, a silent defiance to the past. As the evening progressed, I noticed guests enthusiastically taking photos and posting them on social media, sharing their authentic joy. By morning, my phone was buzzing with notifications, not just from retreat participants sharing their exhilarating experiences, but from bewildered, frantic family members who had suddenly, irrevocably, realized what I was doing. The first text came from Finn. That place looks incredible, Aurora. What's this retreat thing about? Looks insane. Then, a terse message from Isabella. Mom's asking why Clara is with you and not at the family gathering. Just FYI. I chose not to respond immediately, focusing instead on the morning's activities, finding solace and purpose in the deliberate actions of my new reality. We began with sunrise yoga on the deck, a peaceful ritual led by David, who was a certified instructor. After a breakfast of fresh fruit and homemade pastries, Troy led the first group on a nature photography hike through the pristine forest, while Miranda set up her pottery wheels on the patio for the remaining guests, their creative energy a tangible force. Throughout the day, I was too busy, too genuinely engaged, to check my phone often, but when I did, the messages had multiplied, their tone escalating from curiosity to veiled accusation. My brother Owen had texted, "Saw your posts. Looks amazing. Didn't know you were planning something for this week. Why wasn't I invited?" The subtext was clear. He was wondering why he hadn't been included, why he was outside the loop. The most surprising, truly unexpected development came on the third day of the retreat. We were returning from a leisurely boat tour of the lake, the afternoon sun warm on our faces, when I spotted an elegant, impeccably dressed older woman waiting patiently on the private dock, her silhouette outlined against the sparkling water. It took me a moment, a jolt of recognition, to fully comprehend who she was, my grandmother's sister, Great Aunt Eleanor, after whom I had been named. Great Aunt Eleanor, what are you doing here? I exclaimed, rushing forward, helping her gracefully to her feet. I saw photos of this place on that Instagram thing, she said, waving her hand dismissively at the phone. Recognized the view immediately. I was supposed to be at your parents' grand gathering, of course, but this looked far, far more interesting. And much less suffocating. At 84, Great Aunt Eleanor had always been the family's defiant rebel, a woman who had unapologetically traveled the world as a fearless journalist when most women of her generation were rigidly expected to stay home, confined to domestic roles. She had been exceptionally close to my grandparents and had always shown a special, quiet interest in my creative pursuits, a silent ally. That evening, Eleanor and I sat on the deck after most guests had retired, sharing a bottle of her favorite rare single malt scotch, the stars beginning to prick the darkening sky above us. "Your grandparents would be immensely proud of you," she said suddenly, her voice a low, knowing murmur, her gaze fixed on the lake. Not just for this, she gestured expansively at the magnificent property, encompassing the vibrant energy within, but for staying profoundly true to yourself, Aurora, despite Richard and Patricia's incessant disapproval. You know about that? I asked, surprised by her directness, by her candid acknowledgement of the unspoken family dynamic. Of course I do, child. I've watched them favor your siblings, subtly diminish your light, for years. Robert and Eleanor saw it too. It broke their hearts, truly. They wished they could have done more. The unexpected validation, coming from someone who had known and loved my grandparents so intimately, who had seen their struggle, brought a rush of unexpected tears to my eyes, hot and stinging. I've tried so hard to earn their approval, Aunt Eleanor, I admitted, my voice thick with emotion. I wanted them to see me, to accept me. Some people's approval isn't worth earning, Aurora, Eleanor said firmly, her voice imbued with hard-won wisdom. It's a trap. Your grandparents understood that creativity isn't just a career choice. It's a way of seeing the world, a way of being. They saw that in you from the very beginning, your unique light. The conversation with Eleanor centered me, grounding me, reminding me, with a profound clarity, why I'd created the retreat in the first place. It wasn't about proving something to my parents, not anymore. It was about honoring the parts of myself they couldn't, or wouldn't, value. It was about honoring my grandparents' legacy. The next day, as we were gathered for a late, leisurely lunch on the deck, my phone rang, its screen displaying my mother's number. I let it go to voicemail, feeling a surge of calm resolve, but she called again immediately, her digital persistence a testament to her escalating anxiety. On the third consecutive call, I finally excused myself from the table, walked to a secluded corner of the deck, and answered, my voice steady, neutral. Amber, where are you? My mother's voice was tight with thinly veiled anger, laced with panic. Eleanor was supposed to arrive at the retreat yesterday, but she's not answering her phone. She's here. She's with me, Mom, I replied, a quiet satisfaction in my voice. A long, stunned silence followed, stretching across the miles. With you? What do you mean with you? Where is here? I'm hosting my own retreat this week, Mom, I stated, each word a deliberate, powerful declaration. Great Aunt Eleanor decided to join us instead of your gathering. You're in Tahoe? The shock in her voice was almost comical, a perfect, unexpected vindication. But we told you there wasn't enough space. I know exactly what you told me, Mom, I interrupted, keeping my voice level unwavering. And I know you invited 118 people and rented additional properties to fit everyone. So, let's not pretend this was about space, Mom. It never was. Another long, uncomfortable pause, pregnant with unspoken truths. We need to talk about this, Amber. Your father and I are coming over. Right now. Before I could protest, she had abruptly hung up, the line going dead. I returned to the group, trying to maintain my composure, but Grace, my intuitive friend, immediately noticed the subtle shift in my demeanor. My parents are coming here, I explained quietly, the words barely a whisper. They just found out where I am. Grace squeezed my hand, a silent promise of support. We've got your back, Aurora. All of us. We'll stand with you. An hour later, my parents' gleaming Mercedes pulled into the circular driveway, its presence a jarring intrusion. I met them outside, choosing to intercept them before they could disrupt the vibrant clay workshop currently happening in the great room. My mother looked me up and down, her gaze cold and critical, taking in the magnificent property behind me with narrowed, appraising eyes. What exactly is going on here, Aurora? She demanded, her voice sharp with accusation. I'm hosting a creative retreat for friends and colleagues, I replied calmly, my voice steady, my gaze unwavering. Since I wasn't welcome at the family gathering, I made alternative plans. Plans that celebrate creativity and connection. Not welcome. My father's face reddened with indignation, his composure cracking. We simply said there wasn't enough space for one person. I finished for him, my voice flat, devoid of emotion, while you invited 118 others and rented 3 additional properties. Let's not pretend this was about space, Dad. It never was. It was about exclusion. And it was about punishment. My mother's expression flickered wildly between raw anger and profound embarrassment, her carefully constructed facade crumbling. "We thought you'd be busy with work, Aurora. You're always so focused on your projects." "My projects are my career, Mom," I stated, each word a hammer blow of truth. "A highly successful career that you and Dad have never once acknowledged, never celebrated. You've consistently diminished my accomplishments while tirelessly celebrating my siblings. You've made it abundantly clear where I stand in the family hierarchy, a deliberate afterthought." My father, unusually quiet, his usual bluster absent, started to speak, then stopped, his gaze drifting past me to the house. Through the enormous windows, the retreat participants were visible, deeply engaged in Miranda's clay workshop, their faces alight with joy and creativity, laughing and building something beautiful together. "Who are all these people?" he asked, his voice softer, a flicker of bewildered curiosity. "People who value me," I said simply, my voice resonant with newfound strength. "Friends, colleagues, clients, people who make space for me in their lives, who see my worth, who celebrate my contributions." "And Clara's here, too," I added, watching their expressions shift, a fresh wave of shock. "She chose to come to my retreat instead of yours. She chose authentic connection." My mother's face crumpled slightly at this news, a rare crack in her stoic exterior. "Aurora, if you felt excluded, you should have said something. We would have made space." "Would it have made a difference, Mom?" I asked quietly, my gaze holding hers. "Would you have truly listened?" For the first time in my adult life, I saw my father at a profound loss for words. He looked around at the magnificent property, taking in the vibrant community I had meticulously organized, what I had created from their very rejection, from their dismissal. "Perhaps we should talk about this privately, Aurora," he finally said, his voice subdued, a hint of shame in his eyes. "No," I replied firmly, shaking my head. "I'm currently hosting an event. My guests, my chosen family, deserve my full attention. If you'd like to join us for dinner tonight, you're welcome to. As participants, not as observers, not as parents coming to reprimand their child. You'll witness what genuine connection looks like." They exchanged glances, clearly unused to this confident, established version of me, a woman setting clear, unbreakable boundaries. "Dinner is at 7, I added, my voice final, then turned to go back inside, leaving them standing in the driveway. "Aurora," my father called after me, a desperate plea. I paused, but didn't turn around. "This is impressive. What you've done here." It wasn't an apology, not directly, but coming from Richard Hayes, a man who rarely conceded anything, it was profoundly significant. I nodded once, a silent acknowledgement, and continued into the house where my chosen family, my tribe, waited, their laughter and creative energy a warm embrace. My parents did, surprisingly, come to dinner that night. They were stiff and uncomfortable at first, their presence a lingering tension, but Great Aunt Eleanor's witty presence and disarming charm helped ease the atmosphere, subtly guiding the conversation. They met my diverse friends, heard about my professional accomplishments from objective, admiring perspectives, and witnessed firsthand the genuine respect I commanded in my own world, a stark contrast to their dismissive view. By the end of the evening, something had shifted, not dramatically, not a sudden epiphany, but perceptibly, a tiny crack in their rigid facade. As they were leaving, my mother, her voice softer, almost hesitant, said, "Next year, we'll make sure there's space for you at the family retreat, Aurora. We promise." I smiled politely, a polite, non-committal gesture, but made no promises. I had created something too valuable, too authentic, to abandon for a mere invitation. Over the next 2 days, texts trickled in from my siblings. Reactions were, predictably, mixed. Finn seemed genuinely offended he hadn't been invited to my retreat, while Ilara was simply confused by the entire situation. Isabella was defensively protective of our parents, unwilling to acknowledge the toxic family dynamics that had wounded me so deeply. Liam sent a thoughtful message, a rare glimpse of genuine introspection, acknowledging that the family hadn't always been fair to me, hadn't always seen me. The most surprising, truly unexpected response came from Owen, who showed up unannounced on our last full day, a silent, curious observer. I told Mom and Dad I needed a break from the chaos, he explained, his voice subdued, but really, Aurora, I wanted to see what you've created here. It looks absolutely amazing online. I gave him a tour of the magnificent estate, introduced him to my diverse group of creative friends, and invited him to join our intimate closing dinner. Watching him engage with my vibrant, unpretentious creative friends, I saw fleeting glimpses of the curious, unburdened boy he'd been before our parents' suffocating expectations had narrowed his path, squeezing him into their corporate mold. As the retreat neared its end, the success was undeniable, a resounding triumph. Participants were already eagerly asking about next year's event. Professional connections had formed that would undoubtedly lead to collaborations, and, most importantly, I had proven to myself, definitively, that I could create meaningful traditions on my own terms, defining my own legacy. The final morning of the retreat arrived with a bittersweet quality, a mix of triumph and farewell. As guests enjoyed a leisurely breakfast on the deck, bathed in soft morning light, I noticed a familiar SUV pulling into the driveway. My parents had returned, this time with my sister Isabella in tow, their faces grimly determined. I excused myself and met them outside, determined to maintain the boundaries I'd so painstakingly established. "We thought we'd help you pack up, darling," my mother offered, her attempt at a casual, helpful tone falling utterly flat, betraying her true agenda. "That's not necessary, Mom," I replied, my voice calm and firm. "We have everything handled. The property management company will take care of it." Isabella stepped forward, her face etched with a mix of discomfort and a desperate plea. "Aurora, can we talk privately? Please. This has gotten out of hand." I hesitated, then nodded, leading them to a secluded, sun-dappled corner of the property's lush garden. The morning sun filtered through the towering pines, creating dappled shadows on the ground between us, a silent stage for our reckoning. "This has gotten out of hand, Aurora," Isabella began, her voice tight with tension. "You've made Mom and Dad feel absolutely terrible. They're devastated." "That wasn't my intention, Isabella," I said honestly, my voice unwavering. "I simply decided to stop accepting exclusion as my due. I decided to live authentically." "There was a misunderstanding about space," my mother started, attempting to revert to the old, comfortable lie. "Mom," I interrupted gently but firmly, my voice cutting through her pretense. "We both know it wasn't about space. It's never been about space. It was about control. It was about your expectations. It was about your fear of what you didn't understand." My father, unusually quiet until now, his usual bluster absent, finally spoke, his voice surprisingly subdued. "You're right." The simple, raw admission hung in the air between us, a profound, unexpected truth. My mother looked at him in genuine surprise, her mouth slightly agape. "You're right, Patricia," he repeated, meeting my eyes directly, his gaze filled with a dawning, painful understanding. "We've always favored your siblings. We've dismissed your career as a hobby. We've excluded you because we've been profoundly disappointed that you didn't follow the conventional path we wanted for you. The path we chose." His honesty, however painful in its stark clarity, was refreshingly, shockingly genuine. "Thank you for acknowledging that, Dad," I said, a wave of complex emotions washing over me. "But this," he gestured towards the magnificent house, its windows reflecting the serene lake, "this event you've created, with these remarkable, successful people who clearly respect you, who see your brilliance, it's made me realize we've been profoundly wrong. We've missed so much." My mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue, her composure finally breaking, tears freely flowing. "We didn't understand your world, Aurora." It seemed so unstable, so unconventional, compared to what your siblings chose. You never tried to understand, Mom, I pointed out gently but firmly. You never came to my gallery showings, never asked about my clients, never celebrated my artistic achievements, never saw my work as valuable. You're right about that, too, my father admitted, his voice barely a whisper, humbling himself further. And he stumbled over the words, a rare, vulnerable admission. I'm sorry. Truly sorry. Coming from Richard Hayes, the unyielding CEO, those words were as rare and astonishing as snow in July, a moment of profound transformation. I felt something tight in my chest, a knot of old pain, begin to slowly, gently loosen. I can't promise things will change overnight, he continued, his voice still subdued. But I'd like to try, Aurora. To try to understand your world better. To try to bridge this gap. Isabella looked between us, clearly uncomfortable with our father's uncharacteristic vulnerability, his raw honesty. So, will you come to the family retreat next year? She asked, attempting to move past the raw, emotional moment, to return to the familiar. I considered her question carefully, my gaze sweeping over the vibrant energy of my retreat. I'm not sure, Isabella. I might host my own retreat again. It's been incredibly healing for me. Perhaps we could coordinate the dates. Then, my mother suggested, her voice tentative, a small olive branch extended. So, they don't conflict. You could attend both, or at least part of each. It was a small concession, but a genuine one, a sign of their willingness to adapt. I'd consider that, I replied, a glimmer of hope for a different future. At that moment, Grace appeared at the garden entrance, her smile radiant. Sorry to interrupt, but we're ready for the closing circle whenever you are, Aurora. I'll be right there, I told her, then turned back to my family. You're welcome to join us for our closing ceremony if you'd like. As participants, not observers. To truly experience what we've created here. To my surprise, my father nodded, a silent, profound agreement. We'd like that. Very much. As we walked back to the house, Isabella whispered, Owen hasn't stopped talking about yesterday. He said it was the most relaxed he's felt in years, just being himself. He loved it. The closing circle was a cherished tradition I'd borrowed from my art school days, a chance for participants to share reflections on their experience. We gathered in the great room, sitting on soft cushions in a large, inclusive circle, each person taking turns to speak, sharing vulnerabilities and triumphs. When it came to my parents' turn, my father cleared his throat awkwardly, his usual commanding presence diminished by a genuine humility. I'm not much for public speaking unless it's about quarterly projections, he began, eliciting gentle laughter from the guests, but I want to thank Aurora for allowing us to be part of this. It's truly opened my eyes to a world I didn't understand before. A world of creativity and authentic connection. After the ceremony, as guests began to pack their belongings and exchange contact information, my parents pulled me aside, a private moment of quiet conversation. We'd like you to come to dinner next week, Aurora, my mother said, her voice soft, pleading. Just us. To talk more. To try and understand. I agreed, but added, I need you to understand something, Mom. I'm not going to change who I am or what I do to earn your approval. That's not on the table. My path is my own. We know, my father said, surprising me again with his newfound honesty. Maybe it's we who need to change, Aurora. After they left, their Mercedes pulling away silently, I rejoined my guests for our final, communal lunch. Great Aunt Eleanor sat beside me, her eyes twinkling with a mischievous wisdom that seemed to penetrate the very fabric of reality. You know, she said, taking a thoughtful sip of her iced tea, sometimes the family you create is far more important than the family you're born into. Sometimes, that's where you truly find your belonging. I looked around at the long table, filled with the faces of people who had chosen to spend a week supporting and celebrating each other, their laughter echoing through the room. I think you're right, Aunt Eleanor, I admitted, a profound truth settling in my heart. But, she added, patting my hand gently, her gaze knowing it's nice when both can coexist. Give them a chance, Amber. Not for their sake, but for yours. For your own peace. As guests departed throughout the afternoon, the house grew quieter, the vibrant energy slowly receding, leaving behind a profound sense of accomplishment. Clara was among the last to leave, pulling me into a tight, tearful hug. "This was transformative," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I've been so caught up in meeting Mom and Dad's expectations, in living their life, that I forgot what it feels like to just create, to play, to connect authentically. Thank you, Aurora. Thank you for showing me this." "You're welcome at my table anytime, Clara," I told her, my voice filled with love. Owen had extended his impromptu visit, a silent plea for connection, and helped load the last of the supplies into my car. As we closed up the house, a shared task, he said, his voice hesitant. "I'm sorry, Aurora." "For what?" I asked, genuinely curious. "For not seeing what was happening to you, for going along with it, for not standing up for you, for being blind." I looked at my brother, really looked at him, and saw not the corporate gym manager our parents had molded, but the curious, gentle boy who used to build elaborate sand castles with me at the lake, his imagination soaring. "Maybe we can all do better moving forward, Owen," I suggested softly, a glimmer of hope for our future. By sunset, I was alone on the deck of the Summit Estate, watching the golden light fade from the water, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The retreat had been a success far beyond my wildest expectations, not just professionally or socially, but profoundly personally. I had transformed exclusion into inclusion, rejection into creation, hurt into healing. I didn't know what would happen with my family moving forward. Decades of ingrained patterns couldn't be undone in a single weekend. But for the first time in years, there seemed to be an opening, a genuine willingness to see me as I was, not as they wished I would be. As I locked the door of the property for the final time, the key cool in my hand, I felt a profound sense of gratitude for my grandparents who had recognized my creative spirit, for friends who had supported my vision, for the courage to stand firm in my truth, and even, paradoxically, for the pain of exclusion that had forced me to create something uniquely mine, something magnificent. Whatever happened next, I knew this unshakable truth. I would never again make myself smaller to fit into spaces too narrow to hold all of who I was. The drive back to San Francisco gave me time to process everything that had happened, a quiet journey of reflection. The mountain roads wound down from Emerald Lake's elevation, each curve bringing me closer to my everyday life, but with a new, illuminated perspective. The retreat hadn't just been a one-week event. It had been a pivotal turning point, a seismic shift in my personal landscape. When I arrived home, my apartment felt different. Not physically, no, but energetically. The space that had once witnessed my tears of exclusion, my despair, now vibrated with the quiet confidence of someone who had transformed rejection into creation, pain into purpose. I unpacked slowly, savoring each moment, each item a tangible reminder of what I'd accomplished. The leftover welcome basket supplies, the printed itineraries, the vibrant group photos. The responses from guests began flooding in the next day, a testament to the retreat's impact. Email after email expressed profound gratitude, described unexpected creative breakthroughs, and enthusiastically asked about next year's retreat, eager to return. Troy wrote that he'd secured a major photography exhibition after showing his Emerald Lake shots to a gallery owner. Miranda mentioned that 2 retreat participants had commissioned large ceramic pieces for their homes, a direct result of her workshop. Grace called to say she'd already started a group chat for Creative Minds Retreat alumni, a burgeoning community. What had begun as a mere response to exclusion had become something with a life of its own, a self-sustaining community, a vibrant new tradition. A powerful testament to the transformative power of creating your own table when you're not offered a seat at someone else's. The promised dinner with my parents came the following week. I arrived at their San Francisco home with cautious optimism, but firm, unyielding boundaries in place. The conversation was awkward at times, with decades of entrenched patterns not easily broken, but there was an undeniable, palpable shift. My father actually asked genuine questions about my business, real, insightful questions that suggested a burgeoning interest, a willingness to learn. My mother, surprisingly, showed me a ceramic bowl she'd purchased from a local artist, seeking my opinion on the glazing technique, a tentative reach for connection. "We've been talking," my father said over dessert, his voice subdued, about the family retreat. I waited, expecting them to press me again about attending next year, to insist on my conformity. "We think it's gotten away from what your grandparents intended," he continued, a rare moment of introspection. "Too many people, too formal, too network-focused. It's lost its soul." "Next year," my mother added, her voice soft, almost regretful, "we're scaling back. Just immediate family, the way it used to be. Simple, authentic." I nodded, appreciating the gesture, the first true acknowledgement of their missteps, but not ready to commit fully. "That sounds nice," I conceded. And my father cleared his throat, a final, surprising admission. "We'd like to come to your retreat next year, Aurora, just for a day or two, if that would be all right. To see your world more fully. To try and understand." The request surprised me, a genuine shock. Richard and Patricia Hayes, voluntarily entering a space filled with artists, designers, and creative entrepreneurs, people they once dismissed. It wasn't an apology for years of exclusion, no, but it was a profound, undeniable step toward understanding, a fragile bridge being built. "I'd like that, Dad," I said simply, a genuine smile gracing my lips. The weeks that followed brought healing conversations with some siblings and continued tension with others. Clara and I began meeting weekly for coffee, reconnecting as adults in a way we never truly had growing up, rebuilding our bond. Liam invited me to his son's art show at school, a small, yet profoundly meaningful gesture that meant more than he probably realized. Owen called occasionally, asking questions about my work with a curiosity that seemed genuinely eager to learn. Isabella remained stubbornly defensive of our parents, unwilling to acknowledge the toxic family dynamics that had wounded me. Finn and Alara kept their distance, perhaps unsure how to navigate the shifting family landscape, the new unspoken rules. I accepted these varied responses with a newfound equanimity, understanding that each sibling had their own complex relationship with our parents and with me. I also began seeing a therapist, something I'd considered for years, but had always pushed aside with work excuses. Dr. Michaels helped me understand the ingrained family patterns that had shaped me, how being the different child had both wounded me and, paradoxically, strengthened me. How relentlessly seeking parental approval had driven me, but also, insidiously, limited me. The retreat was a pivotal moment, she observed during one session, her voice calm. "You stopped asking for inclusion and created it for yourself. That's immensely powerful, Aurora. You took control of your narrative." The professional impact of the retreat surprised me most of all. Participants had shared their exhilarating experiences on social media and in influential industry circles, leading to a surge of new client inquiries and unexpected collaboration opportunities. My studio received prominent feature coverage in a major design publication, with the retreat specifically mentioned as a shining example of creative community building. I was even invited to speak at prestigious design conferences about fostering creative communities, a new, exhilarating direction I hadn't anticipated for my career. 3 months after the retreat, Great Aunt Eleanor called with unexpected news, her voice crackling with triumph. "I've been thinking, Aurora," she began, "about Arthur and Eleanor's true wishes for the family property. It was never meant to be a status symbol or a networking venue. It was meant to nurture creativity and connection, to be a place of authentic joy." "I know, Aunt Eleanor," I agreed, a wistful memory of my grandparents. I've spoken to the family trust lawyer, she continued, her voice firm. As the last surviving sibling, I have some say in how the property is used. I've officially requested that 1 week each summer be permanently designated for a creative retreat under your direction. I was speechless, tears springing to my eyes, a wave of gratitude overwhelming me. Your grandparents saw your gifts from the very beginning, Aurora, Eleanor said gently. This is what they would have wanted. This is their legacy through you. The trust lawyer confirmed the arrangement the following week, a formal, legal triumph. My parents, astonishingly, didn't fight it. Your retreat was impressive, Aurora, my father acknowledged when I called to discuss it, his voice tinged with a grudging respect. Perhaps it's time the property hosted something truly meaningful again. As I began planning the next year's Creative Minds retreat, this time to be held at my grandparents' beloved property, I reflected on the transformative journey of the past year. What had begun with the sharp pain of exclusion, the sting of betrayal, had led, unexpectedly, to the creation of something far more valuable than mere inclusion in someone else's predetermined event. I had learned that sometimes rejection is simply divine redirection. That creating your own path, your own destiny, can be infinitely more fulfilling than desperately following someone else's expectations. That chosen family, forged in shared values and unwavering support, can be as profoundly meaningful as biological connections, sometimes even more so. Most importantly, I had learned that my worth wasn't determined by my parents' approval or my siblings' acceptance. It was inherent, an unshakable truth, expressed powerfully through my creative work, my authentic relationships, and my unwavering courage to stand firmly, unapologetically, in my truth. The family dynamics weren't perfectly healed. Such deep, ingrained patterns rarely are, and I didn't expect miracles. But there was movement, awareness, a fragile, hopeful possibility of genuine change. I had set boundaries without burning bridges, created space without closing doors. Looking out my apartment window at the San Francisco skyline, bathed in the soft glow of twilight, I thought about all the people out there who might be feeling excluded, diminished, or forgotten by those who should value them most. I thought about how the retreat had created a template that others might follow, a way of responding to rejection with powerful creation rather than despair. Next year's retreat, held in the spirit of my grandparents, would be even more intentional, more inclusive, more vibrantly creative, a beacon for kindred spirits. I opened my laptop and began drafting ideas, feeling my grandparents' guiding spirits, their quiet encouragement, guiding my hands. Sometimes the most powerful response to being told there isn't enough space for you is to create a space so magnificent, so inviting, so authentically yours, that others long to be included in it. A space built not from resentment, but from self-worth, not from competition, but from abundant, generous creativity. I had done exactly that. And in doing so, I had not only begun to change my family's perception of me, but more profoundly, I had irrevocably transformed my perception of myself. Have you ever been excluded from family events or made to feel like the black sheep? How did you respond? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of healing and empowerment. Remember, sometimes the family we choose is the one that truly sees us. Share this with someone who might need to hear this message today. Thank you for watching, and remember, your worth isn't determined by those who can't see it, but by your courage to honor it anyway.